And the practice, physicians are wonderful at using mnemonics. I mean, for all the massive material that we have to commit to memory. And I came up with a very simple mnemonic for how jihad has played out historically on the ground, and I call it MPED: massacre, pillage, enslavement, and deportation. I mean, this is the way jihad has played out over the centuries through the present.
Can you kind of take us in an overview of the jihad history?
Yeah, I mean, you see the evolution in Muhammad's life, again, relying on the sacralized Muslim sources, from a period of proselytization early on to a period that is much more militant in the last decade of his life. And this is very important because he is ecce homo arabicus. I mean, he is the perfect man, he is the messenger, and so his behaviors become normative, become sacred. And what you see in the last decade of his life is an increasingly aggressive change to real conquest. He conquers pagans and Jews and Christians, and in the case of pagans, they must be converted to Islam. In the case of Jews and Christians in the Arabian Peninsula itself, they become tributaries. They must live under Islamic law, and the notion of the jizya begins to take place. The jizya is a special poll tax. And if we look at the origins of the word jizya, it basically means the tax paid in lieu of being slain. So we see a dispossession of the Jewish and Christian tribes, and we see their subjugation. And it's very interesting. There is when the Jews of the Khaybar Oasis were attacked, Ali, who was the fourth rightly guided caliph, and very important to Shia Islam. Ali, according to the Muslim sources, asks Muhammad, well, why are we attacking these peaceful farmers, in the Khaybar Oasis? And the answer is to bring them under Islamic rule. So we see at the end of the Prophet's life the sort of proto-jihad developing. And this was then, of course, at his death, there's a tremendous explosion, what's called the Great Jihad, where we see within 100 years you see Islam spread by conquest, literally from the Iberian Peninsula all the way east to the parts of the Indian subcontinent. And so the message is carried clearly by military means.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Banu Qurayza?
The illustration on the cover is a Persian miniature, which is depicting the massacre of the Banu Qurayza. They were a Jewish tribe that was accused of collaborating with Muhammad's enemies. He surrounded them, besieged them. They petitioned to submit and to be allowed to give up all their possessions. A series of negotiations took place. And Muhammad decided to have as arbiter one of his clan who had been injured as a result of a conflict with the Banu Qurayza. So he was kind of biased against them. And he decided that all the men had to be killed and that the women and children taken as slaves. And Muhammad ratified this agreement. And according to the Muslim sources, 600 to 900 men of the Banu Qurayza were beheaded. And then the tribe was dispossessed. The women and children were in fact enslaved, and it was incorporated. So on a practical level, their possessions became booty and helped the Muslims develop part of their jihadist cavalry corps. But it became integrated into Islamic law as a principle. You see jurists citing this event as a principle for dealing with vanquished populations.
It became like a case law.
Exactly. It became a precedent for how do you deal with captives, and it became a normative part of the Sharia.
So that's within the life of Muhammad.
Yes, yes. If we, again, we're relying now entirely on Muslim sources.
Yes.
This is, according to those sources, the event is supposed to have taken place around 627. A year later was the incident that I described in terms of the Jewish tribe of the Khaybar Oasis, 628, who, unlike the Quraysh, were not accused of any sort of collaboration with Muhammad's enemies. That was sort of a clear example of a pure conquest.
Okay, let's go a little further down the timeline.
So, again, we see this explosion of conquests. And Muhammad dies reportedly in 632, and we see this explosion of conquests in the Near East, across North Africa, up to Spain, in the other direction, through Mesopotamia, parts of Iran to India. The rules that are applied here are remarkably similar. So you can see the calls to accept Islam, or face conquest, at the same time that they're being pronounced in the Iberian Peninsula. They're being pronounced to the Hindu populations in Hindu and Buddhist populations in Sind. There's a remarkable similarity.
I didn't quite understand the last point. You were comparing Indian and Iberian.
Yeah, just the rules are applied across cultures.
Uniformity.
Uniformity.
Okay.
There's a uniformity.
Okay, I understand. Now, was there a period of time where the militant nature of jihad was more peaceful, perhaps with the Sufi Islamic traditions?
There does emerge, in theory at least, a Sufi tradition of the so-called greater jihad, which is this inner spiritual struggle. But it certainly doesn't preclude the Sufis themselves from being prototypical jihadists in the warlike mode. And there's a very, if I could read, there's a very interesting quote from Al-Ghazali. Ghazali died in 1111.
Now, who is Al-Ghazali?
Ghazali is considered by Muslim scholars and non-Muslim scholars alike as being one of the most important Sufi theologians, and in some respects one of the most important Muslims after Muhammad himself. This is one of the texts that has not appeared in English before I had it translated. And this is, I want to read two parts, Ghazali on jihad, and then Ghazali on what the dhimmis, what the peoples vanquished by jihad should be subjected to in terms of rule.
And this is just a translation of what Ghazali himself said.
That's right. And Ghazali, again, is this lionized Sufi theologian.
And who's the translator?
The translator is a professor of Arabic, teaches Arabic in this area at a major university.
Okay.
I want to protect his identity. Okay. One must go on jihad, i.e. warlike razzias or raids, at least once a year. One may use a catapult against them, non-Muslims, when they are in a fortress, even if among them are women and children. One may set fire to them and or drown them. If the person of the al-Kitab, people of the book, Jews and Christians typically, is enslaved, his marriage is automatically revoked. One may cut down their trees. One must destroy their useless books. Jihadists may take as booty whatever they decide. They may steal as much food as they need. So that's his encapsulated recapitulation of what's standard, jihad ideology. On those subjected by the jihad, the so-called dhimmi. The dhimmi is obliged not to mention Allah or his apostle. Jews, Christians, and Magians, probably Zoroastrians, must pay the jizya, the poll tax on non-Muslims. On offering up the jizya, the dhimmi must hang his head while the official takes hold of his beard and hits the dhimmi on the protuberant bone beneath his ear, probably the mandible. They are not permitted to ostentatiously display their wine or church bells. Their houses may not be higher than the Muslims, no matter how low that is. The dhimmi may not ride an elegant horse or mule. He may ride a donkey, only if the saddle work is of wood. He may not walk on the good part of the road. They, the dhimmis, have to wear an identifying patch on their clothing, even women, and even in the public baths. Dhimmis must hold their tongue.